The Pallavas, Chalukyas, and Pulakeshin's Prashasti. The Pallavas and Chalukyas were the most important ruling dynasties in South India during this period. The Pallavas and the Chalukyas. The kingdom of the Pallavas spread from the region around their capital Kanchipuram to the Kaveri delta, while that of the Chalukyas was centered around Raichur Doab between the rivers Krishna and the river Tungabhadra. Raichur Doab, around Raichur Doab between the river Krishna and the river Tungabhadra. Aihole, the capital of the Chalukyas, was an important trading center. See map 7. It developed as a religious center with a number of temples. Remember, Aihole developed as a religious center with a number of temples. The Pallavas and the Chalukyas, the ruling dynasties in South India, frequently raided one another's lands, especially attacking the capital cities, which were prosperous towns. The best known Chalukya ruler was Pulakeshin II. Pulakeshin II. We know about him from a Prashasti composed by his court poet Ravikirti. Pulakeshin II's Prashasti was composed by his court poet Ravikirti. So the king and his court poet both had their names with two syllables. King Pulakeshin II had a court poet Ravikirti. Pulakeshin II Ravikirti. Pulakeshin II's Prashasti was composed by Ravikirti, his court poet. This tells us about his ancestors who are traced back through 4 generations from father to son. Pulakeshin evidently got the kingdom from his uncle. According to Ravikirti, who was Ravikirti? Pulakeshin II's court poet who wrote King Pulakeshin II's Prashasti. According to Ravikirti, he led expeditions along both the west and the east coasts. Besides, he checked the advance of Harsha. There is an interesting play of words in the poem. Harsha means happiness. Harsha means happiness. The poet says that after this defeat by Pulakeshin II, Harsha was no longer Harsha. Pulakeshin also attacked the Pallava king who took shelter behind the walls of Kanchipuram. Remember, the kingdom of the Pallavas spread from the region around their capital Kanchipuram to the Kaveri delta. When I hear the word Kanchipuram, what comes to my mind is my mother's Kanchipuram silk sari collection. But Kanchipuram also had a wall, or a set of walls rather. The walls of Kanchipuram. See, we have heard of the Great Wall of China, the Berlin Wall, but when it comes to our beloved Kanchipuram, it is the walls of Kanchipuram. And it is behind these walls of Kanchipuram, yes, behind these walls of Kanchipuram of his own kingdom did the Pallava king, the Pallava ruler, took shelter when he was attacked by Pulakeshin II. Pulakeshin II was the king of the Chalukyas. Riddle time. Who was stronger, the Chalukyas or the Pallavas? The Chalukyas, under the reign of their best known ruler Pulakeshin II. Alas, the Chalukya victory was short lived. Ultimately, both the Pallavas and the Chalukyas gave way to new rulers belonging to the Rashtrakuta and the Chola dynasties. The Rashtrakuta and the Chola dynasties. So the Chalukyas and the Pallavas eventually gave way to the Rashtrakuta and the Chola dynasties. Let's remember it this way. The PC dynasties gave way to the RC dynasties. The Pallava and the Chalukya dynasties, the PC dynasties, gave way to the RC dynasties, the Rashtrakuta and the Chola dynasties. Who were the other rulers who tried to control the coasts and why? How were these kingdoms administered? As in the case of earlier kings, land revenue remained important for these rulers and the village remained the basic unit of administration. There were some new developments as well. Kings adopted a number of steps to win the support of men who were powerful, either economically or socially, or because of their political and military strength. For instance, 1. Some important administrative posts were now hereditary. HERE here, DI, die, TARY, hereditary. This means that sons succeeded fathers to these posts. For example, the poet Harishena was Mahadandanayaka or chief judicial officer like his father. Mahadandanayaka. Maha means great, Danda means punishment, Nayaka means justice. Mahadandanayaka, chief judicial officer. 2. Sometimes one person held many offices. For instance, besides being a Mahadandanayaka, Harishena was a Kumar Amatya. Kumar Amatya, meaning an important minister, and a Sandhi Vigrahika. Sandhi Vigrahika, meaning a minister of war and peace. 3. Besides, important men probably had a say in local administration. These included the Nagara Shreshthi or chief banker or merchant of the city. The Nagara Shreshthi, the chief banker or merchant of the city. The Sartavaha or leader of the merchant caravans. The Sartavaha or the leader of the merchant caravans. The Pratama Kulika or the chief craftsman. Pratama means chief. Pratham. Pratama Kulika, the chief craftsman. And the head of the Kayasthas or scribes. Kayasthas or scribes. So this was how the king tried to win the support of men who were powerful. Power. Either economically, that is money wise. Economically means money related, rich, or socially means high social status, or politically strong, or the men who had great military strength. So the kings tried to win the favor of 4 types of powerful men. 1. Economically powerful men, that is rich people. 2. Socially powerful men, that is those who had high social status. 3. Politically powerful and strong men. And 4. Men who had military strength, military might. Let's revise the names of the posts the king gave to these powerful people to win their favor. Mahadandanayaka, Chief Judicial Officer. Mahadandanayaka, Chief Judicial Officer. Kumar Amatya, Important Minister. Kumar Amatya, Important Minister. Kumar Amatya, Important Minister. Sandhi Vigrahika, Minister of War and Peace. Sandhi Vigrahika, Minister of War and Peace. Nagara Shreshti, Chief Banker or Merchant. Nagara Shreshti, Chief Banker or Merchant. Sartavaha, Leader of the Merchant Caravans. Sartavaha, Leader of the Merchant Caravans. Pratama Kulika, Chief Craftsman. Pratama Kulika, Chief Craftsman. Kayasthas, Scribes. Kayasthas, Scribes. Whenever you see a minister's car flashing through, escorted by police vans, say to yourself, the Kumar Amatya, the important minister, is passing by. The Kumar Amatya, the important minister, is passing by. So refer to the important ministers of your locality as Kumar Amatya. Sandhi Vigrahika, Minister of War and Peace. Sandhi Vigrahika, Minister of War and Peace. When you think of the defense minister of your country, you can refer to him in your mind as the Sandhi Vigrahika, the Minister of War and Peace, the Sandhi Vigrahika. The Nagara Shreshti, Every time you enter a bank, imagine the bank manager sitting with the greatest businessman, that is merchant of your town. Bank manager and greatest merchant of your town sitting at the bank manager's table in the bank. And say in your mind, the Nagara Shreshti, chief banker, or the Nagara Shreshti, chief merchant of my town, are sitting here in the bank manager's cabin. The Nagara Shreshti, chief banker, Nagara Shreshti, chief merchant. Sartavaha, leader of the merchant caravans. Sartavaha, leader of the goods trucks. Sartavaha, leader of the goods trucks. Pratama Kulika, Pratama, chief, Kulika, craftsman. Pratama Kulika, chief craftsman. If your art teacher at school is also very good at craft, you can think of art teacher as Pratama Kulika, chief craftsman. Kayasthas, scribes. Those who write. A scribe is someone who writes. Kayasthas. So every time you write on your notebook, imagine yourself as a Kayastha or a scribe who is writing. So, the king gave these posts to the powerful men. These policies were reasonably effective, but sooner or later, some of these powerful men grew strong enough to set up independent kingdoms. What do you think may have been the advantages and disadvantages of having hereditary officers? Here, 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 DI, die, TARY, hereditary officers, a new kind of army. Like earlier rulers, some of these kings maintained a well organized army with elephants, chariots, cavalry, and foot soldiers. You could hear the trumpet of elephants, the roar of the chariots, the cavalry, and the foot soldiers. Besides, there were military leaders who provided the king with troops whenever he needed them. They were not paid regular salaries. Instead, some of them received grants of land. So they were paid in land, not in money. They collected revenue from the land and used this to maintain soldiers and horses and provide equipment for warfare. These men were known as Samantas. 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 Whenever the ruler was weak, Samantas tried to become independent. So, who were Samantas? Samantas were military leaders who were paid in land. For what? They were the military leaders who provided the king with troops whenever he needed them. So, the king would say, Samanta, I am giving you this land. You take care of these troops, give them what is required, maintain the soldiers, the horses, equipments, and whenever I require, you have to send them for my service. So, Samantas were military leaders who were paid in land. Remember, whenever the ruler was weak, Samantas tried to become independent. Assemblies in the southern kingdoms. The inscriptions of the Pallavas mention a number of local assemblies. These included the Sabha, which was an assembly of Brahmin landowners. A Sabha is an assembly, that is a gathering. This assembly functioned through subcommittees which looked after irrigation, agricultural operations, making roads, local temples, etc. So, how did an assembly function? It functioned through subcommittees. The Ur was a village assembly found in areas where the landowners were not Brahmins. And the Nagaram was an organization of merchants. It is likely that these assemblies were controlled by rich and powerful landowners and merchants. Many of these local assemblies continued to function for centuries. Let's recap. Assembly of Brahmin landowners, Sabha. Assembly of non-Brahmin landowners, Ur. Organization of merchants, Nagaram. Sabha, Ur, Nagaram. Sabha, Brahmin Land Owners Assembly, Ur, non-Brahmin landowners assembly. Nagaram, merchants organization. Ordinary people in the kingdoms. We can catch an occasional glimpse of the lives of ordinary people from plays and other accounts. Let us look at some of these. Kalidasa is known for his plays depicting life in the king's court. Riddle. Kalidasa wrote plays depicting life in the court of which king? If you remember, Chandragupta II. Chandragupta II was blessed to have two of the greatest men in his court, Kalidasa the poet and Aryabhatta the astronomer. An interesting feature about these plays by Kalidasa about life in King Chandragupta II's court is that the king and most Brahmins are shown as speaking Sanskrit, while women and men other than the king and Brahmins used Prakrit. His most famous play, Abhijnana Shakuntalam, is the story of the love between a king named Dushyanta and a young woman named Shakuntala. We find an interesting description of the plight of a poor fisherman in this play. A fisherman finds a ring. A fisherman found a precious ring which the king had given to Shakuntala, King Dushyanta, but which had been accidentally swallowed by a fish. When he went to the palace with it, the gateman accused him of theft, and the chief police officer was rather rude. However, the king was happy when he saw the ring and sent a reward for the fisherman. Then the police officer and the gateman decided to take a share of the reward and went along with the fisherman to have a drink. Do you think that if a poor man finds something and reports this to the police, he would be treated like this today? Name a famous man who taught in Prakrit, the language of the people, and a king who issued inscriptions in Prakrit. The famous man who taught in Prakrit was Mahavira. And because he taught in Prakrit, his message spread far and wide because the common people could understand his message. And the king who issued inscriptions in Prakrit was the great Ashoka, the great Emperor Ashoka. Yes, he issued his inscriptions and wrote his inscriptions in Prakrit, not in Sanskrit. Let's go for a moment to China. The Chinese pilgrim Fa Xian, Faxian, Fa Xian, Faxian, noticed the plight of those who were treated as untouchables by the high and mighty. They were expected to live on the outskirts of the city. He writes, "If such a man enters a town or a marketplace, he strikes a piece of wood in order to keep himself separate. People hearing this sound know what it means and avoid touching him or brushing against him." So, from this account of Fashian, we know that an untouchable would take a wooden stick and make a noise as he walked. So, when people would hear that noise, they would know, he's an untouchable, so we should not go and touch him or brush against him. And Banabhatta, 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 provides us with a vivid picture of the king's army on the move. The king's army. The king traveled with an enormous amount of equipment. Apart from weapons, there were things of daily use such as pots, pans, furniture, golden footstools, food, including animals such as goat, deer, rabbits, vegetables, spices carried on carts or loaded onto pack animals such as camels and elephants. This huge army was accompanied by musicians beating drums and others playing horns and trumpets. Villagers had to provide hospitality along the way. They came with gifts of curds, gur, jaggery, and flowers, and provided fodder for the animals. They also tried to meet the king and placed their complaints and petitions before him. The king is passing by, the king is passing by with his army. Come, 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 let's take him gifts of curd, good flowers. Let's take some fodder for his animals. Come, come, come. At the same time, let's tell the king also. Let's place our petitions before him. Your Majesty, please accept this humble gift of curd and jaggery. Here are some flowers. Here is some fodder for your animals. Your Majesty, the well is too far. I have to walk so much to get water for me and my family. May it please Your Majesty to build us a well close by. The army left a trail of destruction behind. Elephants often trampled down the huts of villagers, and the oxen yoked to the caravans of merchants ran away, scared by the tumult. As Banabhatta says, the whole world was swallowed up in dust. The whole world was swallowed up in dust. Make a list of all the things that were carried with the army. What did the villagers bring for the king? Elsewhere. Find Arabia on map 6, page 88-89. Although it is a desert, it was at the hub of communications for centuries. In fact, Arab merchants and sailors played an important role in the sea trade between India and Europe. See page 104. Others who lived in Arabia were the Bedouins. B-E-D, Bed, O-U-I-N-S, Bedouins. Pastoral tribes depending mainly on hardy animals like camels that could survive the desert. Around 1400 years ago, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, introduced a new religion, Islam, in Arabia. Like Christianity, Islam was a religion that laid stress on the equality and unity of all before Allah, the one supreme God. Here is a verse from the Holy Quran, the sacred book of Islam. For Muslim men and women, for believing men and women, for devout men and women, for true men and women, for men and women who are patient and constant, for men and women who humble themselves, for men and women who give in charity, for men and women who fast, for men and women who guard their chastity, and for men and women who engage much in Allah's remembrance. For them has Allah prepared forgiveness and great reward. Within 100 years, Islam spread to North Africa, Spain, Iran, and India. Arab sailors who were already familiar with the coastal settlements of the subcontinent now brought the new religion with them. Arab soldiers conquered Sindh in present-day Pakistan about 1300 years ago. Trace the routes that would have been taken by these sailors and soldiers on map 6. Imagine Harshavardhana's army will visit your village next week. Your parents are preparing for the visit. Describe what they say and do. Let's discuss. Do you think ordinary people would have read and understood the Prashastis? Give reasons for your answer. Let's do. If you had to make a genealogy for yourself, who are the people you would include in it? How many generations would you like to show? Make a chart and fill it. Let's do. How do you think wars affect the lives of ordinary people today? When I was a little girl in the year 1991, I lived in the beautiful land of Saudi Arabia. 1991 was the year that the Gulf War broke out in the Gulf. George W. Bush was the president of the US of A in 1991. I have lived through a war. Today, when I look back, I realize that it was indeed a horror. But in the year 1991, since I was a little girl, all my classmates and me had a lot of fun during the war because our teachers would conduct trainings that would teach us how to behave when we heard the siren. A siren was a loud sound. Beep, 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 beep. It was too loud to alert everyone that the war has begun and we have to proceed with the drill. We were trained what to do in case it was a gas war. We were given masks to wear. After the drill, when teacher was not in class, one of us would wear the mask and play ghost and frighten all the other classmates. Whenever we heard the siren, we were all very happy because we would have to stop our studies and go and learn to do the drill. These were the practice sirens and the practice drills. But then the real sirens began and the real drills began, where we had to go and hide ourselves under tables to protect ourselves. We had to wear our gas masks and we had to pray. So, in a war, the first place that is targeted is the communication tower. I have this memory once when we switched on the television to check out what was happening when we were locked indoors during the ongoing war. The commentator was holding the mic and the mic was swinging from left to right because the commentator was so nervous. And he said, as his mic swung from left to right in his hand, ensure to put petroleum belly on your jelly. We all understood because we all knew that we had to put petroleum jelly on our belly button. So the poor TV news anchor was worried that while he gave us instructions for our safety, a bomb might fall on his TV tower. I wonder who the Sandhi Vigrahika, the Minister of War and Peace, was in the different Gulf countries during the Gulf War. Find out about Operation Desert Storm. It has something to do with the Gulf War of 1991. Keywords: Prashasti, Aryavarta, Dakshinapatha, genealogy, hereditary officer, Samanta, assembly, Nagaram. Some important dates: beginning of the Gupta dynasty, about 1700 years ago. The rule of Harshavardhana, about 1400 years ago. Gupta dynasty 1700 years ago, Harshavardhana's rule 1400 years ago. Thank you for learning about new empires and kingdoms. Thank you, Lord, for protecting us during wartime. Thank you, Lord.